I didn't mean to start a club. I only wanted a place to eat my sandwich. The bench sat on a quiet stretch of Ocean Avenue in Santa Monica, half in sun, half in the kind of shade that makes you sigh. I found it on a Tuesday in March, when my office air felt too cold and my head felt too full. I carried a turkey sandwich, a paper bag of chips, and the kind of mood that makes you walk slower. I sat down. The seat was warm. The ocean looked like someone had ironed it flat. A skateboard rolled by, clacked twice, and then the sound went soft again. That was all. It was good enough to make me promise myself I'd come back the next day. After that, I visited the bench like it was a friend. The second week, I started to notice the other regulars. A woman in blue scrubs walked past at the same minute every day, holding an iced coffee she never seemed to finish. A retired guy with a Dodgers cap did a loop with his small dog and told the dog the news out loud. A pair of older men set up a travel chessboard on the low wall behind me and spoke in whispers, like the pieces could hear. A produce seller from the Wednesday farmers market parked his truck near the curb and waved at people who waved first. The rollerblader in neon shorts practiced stopping at the crosswalk, touching the pole each time like it was a finish line. I ate slowly and watched. The city moved, and the bench stayed. On a Friday, a teenager sat beside me and asked if I had a pen. He had a note card with bullet points for a speech. He was practicing for a student council race. Be concise, I told him, even though no one had asked me for advice. He read the card once and then put it away. Thanks, he said. Minutes later, he trotted off, and I realized the patient in blue scrubs had left her iced coffee on the arm, like an offering. I took a sip by accident and then froze. I looked up and down the sidewalk. No one claimed it. I left it there, and it became a rule I never wrote down. Take nothing that doesn't belong to you, except the view. Small favors found me. I kept a spare napkin. I carried a couple of Band-Aids after the rollerblader scraped a wrist. I started tossing an extra orange in my bag in case I ran into the chess pair, who always forgot to bring snacks and always acted surprised when I had won. I didn't mean to be the bench guy, but people found me in the way people find shade, one step at a time. On a quiet Monday, I discovered a loose brass screw under the seat. I twisted it with a quarter. The bench gave a tiny groan and then settled again, like a big cat adjusting. That night, I taped a thin notebook under the bench. It was a cheap, spiral-bound thing with a blue cover and paper that felt soft. I left a note on top, written in block letters. If you sat here today, write something. It can be anything. I wasn't sure what I expected. A grocery list? A doodle of the ocean? A week later, I checked. My hands were shaking, which annoyed me. I'm a grown man, I told myself. It's just paper. On the first page, someone had written, "The clouds look like pancakes today." Under that, I said sorry first, and it felt better than winning. Farther down the page, Seagull Thief 2, Alex 0. I laughed alone, with my head down and my shoulders moving, and the bench laughed with me in a quiet way. I bought better tape the next day. The notebook grew in a steady, shy way. I never watched anyone write in it, and I never sat there and read when someone else was near, but the pages filled. Someone drew the skateboard wheels and made them look like tiny suns. Someone wrote a recipe for a microwave chocolate mug cake and promised it wasn't bad, which in fact made it sound delicious. The woman in scrubs, her name was Maya, I learned, scribbled a tiny list of songs for morning drives. The Dodgers cap guy signed his entry Gus and wrote that the dog's name was Alfie and that Alfie enjoyed listening to traffic like it was jazz. A DJ with big headphones sketched an arrow pointing to the ocean and wrote, "The best track in town." I brought thicker tape. Spring burned into summer. Seagulls strutted like security guards. I learned which days to avoid the concrete when the sun teased out heat. I started timing my lunches for the shade. The bench felt like a small room with no walls. Every now and then someone sat and told me something simple. My favorite stories had 5 words or fewer. Got the new job. Called my mom back. Trying again today. They landed and stayed in me. I started to carry a small trash bag to gather cup lids and straw wrappers. It took 2 minutes and felt like brushing the bench's teeth. Then, one Tuesday in August, I walked over and the bench was gone. The sidewalk was empty except for 2 dark circles where the bolts had been. They looked like eyes. I stood there with my lunch in my hand and my mouth open. I had the strange urge to apologize. I had the stranger urge to laugh. It felt like reaching for a door that is always opened and finding it locked. I sat on the low wall behind the empty space and tried to eat my sandwich, but it tasted like cardboard, which was cruel to my sandwich because it had done nothing wrong. People passed and looked confused, and I shrugged at them like this kind of thing happens all the time in Santa Monica. Benches get up and walk away. The ocean kept its calm face. I kept mine, too, but inside my chest, everything wobbled a little, the way a coffee lid wobbles when you snap it down and it doesn't click. I called the city. A calm woman at Public Works told me the bench had been removed for a film shoot and would be back within 10 business days, which felt like a month and a half in bench time. I thanked her and said I hoped the bench got a speaking role. She didn't laugh, or maybe she did, and covered the phone. After I hung up, I went outside and stood in the empty space again, looking down at the 2 circles. I felt silly for how much it mattered to me. It was just a bench, a thing you could buy or build. But the air around that spot felt like the last breath of a note on a guitar. You can't hold it, but you know it's there. Around noon, the regulars started to drift by and ask me what happened. I explained and watched their faces drop and then bounce back. Maya from the hospital tapped the space where the armrest should be. I take my 5 minutes here before night shift, she said. You'd be amazed how much 5 minutes can save. Gus lifted Alfie and set him on the low wall. We'll make do, he said, like a coach before a rainy game. The rollerblader practiced stopping at the crosswalk, touched the pole, and ghosted away. The next morning, I brought a folding camp chair and a cardboard sign. I wrote, temporary bench here, 12 to 1, and taped it to the chair back. It looked ridiculous, which helped. I put the chair where the bench used to be, facing the ocean. I sat, and I felt like the host of a tiny talk show. The first guest was the teenager with the note card. He didn't need a pen. He just wanted to sit. 20 minutes in, a sunburned tourist asked if the chair was free. It's a very small public bench, I said, and we shared it, the left half for him, the right half for me, our arms a polite inch apart. After he left, I set up a second chair. At noon on day 3, the chairs were full, and 2 people leaned against the low wall, and Alfie sat beneath a chair like he was reading shade. Security asked me to move the chairs 4 feet to avoid blocking a film crew that was rolling equipment. We shifted under a jacaranda tree, where purple blossoms fell like soft confetti. There, the shade felt kind, and the breeze didn't hold grudges. I brought the notebook in a shoebox so it wouldn't get lost, and I kept it on my lap while we talked. Write something, I'd say, and slide out a pen. People did. A college kid wrote his first and middle name to make the moment heavier. A chef from the food truck on Broadway dropped a tip about reheating pizza, skillet, lid, 2 teaspoons of water at the end. Someone confessed to losing a blue hat that wasn't his and promised to keep looking. An apology to a younger brother took up 2 pages and ended with a drawing of a basketball hoop with a ball stuck between rim and backboard. Everyone who read that one nodded the same way. On day 6 without the bench, a local blogger stopped to take a picture of the chairs and my crooked sign. She posted it that afternoon. The headline said, "The Moving Bench Club." The name made me laugh. The photo made my shirt look wrinkled, which was correct. The post brought more people. A yoga teacher came by with paper cups and lemonade. A UPS driver left his hand truck leaning on the tree and signed the book with a drawing of a brown box that had tiny wings. A violinist played a single soft piece and then put the bow away, like music was something you could fold. Public Works sent a guy named Reggie to check the situation. He was tall and curious and didn't write me a ticket. He listened for a while, then asked about the book. I showed him the shoebox. "You taped it under the old bench?" he asked. I nodded. He looked impressed and a little troubled, like a dad noticing a kid has balanced 3 soup cans to reach the cookie jar. "I'll see about your bench," he said. No promises. 2 days later, the bench came back on a flatbed truck with straps. Watching someone screw a bench into the ground is more exciting than it sounds. People clapped. The crew stepped back, hands on hips, admiring the work the way people look at a fence they just fixed. I bent down and checked under the seat. There was a smudge of tape residue, but the notebook wasn't there. My stomach dipped, even though I already knew it wouldn't be. I turned around to say something to Maya, and there was Reggie, walking down the sidewalk with the blue notebook in his hand. "I thought this belonged to you all," he said, and his eyes looked like they wanted to smile before his mouth did. The notebook was dusty but safe. I almost hugged him, and he almost let me. We tried to strap a little plastic box under the bench to hold the book, but Reggie shook his head. "No attachments to city property," he said, with a tone that suggested he might pretend not to see something small, but not this small something. We took the box off and then carried the book across the street to Marta's coffee cart. Marta sold drip coffee and croissants that shed a snow of crumbs. She agreed to keep the book under the counter. "Ask Marta for the bench book?" I wrote on a card and taped it to the back of the seat. It looked official, and people treated it that way. Every day a few new lines appeared, dry and funny and strong. One afternoon a sentence landed that made the air thinner. I didn't cry when the doctor said the word. I cried here. We left extra space after that one. We let the page breathe. 2 days of rain arrived like a surprise guest with a good story. The bench looked lonely and important in the wet. I brought an umbrella and sat anyway, because I had promised myself I would keep showing up. The ocean grew its small white teeth and then relaxed again, like it had remembered something. I wore a jacket that smelled like old campfires and held the umbrella handle with both hands while I ate. The sidewalk filled with that clean, busy sound of water meeting earth. I thought the notebook would go silent for a while, but when I crossed to Marta's cart, she lifted a Ziploc bag like a trophy. "Maya dropped it off before work," she said. The notebook inside was dry. A new message sat at the top. "Rain is the city washing our thinking." Under it, someone else had written, "Today, I ordered soup." When the rain stopped, the sky turned the color of a good t-shirt. Our small club, still a joke name to me, found its rhythm again. People came and went. Some nodded and kept going. Some stayed and let their days slow down for 5 minutes. I learned to travel light. Sandwich, napkin, tiny trash bag, pen. On a quiet Thursday, I counted exactly 8 breaths between waves. On a busy Friday, I counted none and just watched, the way you watch a sleeping child. It felt silly to be so attached to a piece of city furniture, but the feeling was soft and steady, not loud. It sat with me like a calm friend. A year snuck up on me. I realized it while looking for my keys. The date on my phone matched the date written on the front page of the blue notebook. I decided to mark the day in the smallest possible way. I bought a pack of sidewalk chalk, a bag of oranges, and paper cups. I wrote a tiny note, 5 at 5 here. I left it in the notebook and showed it to no one. The day arrived with a light wind. At 5, I set a little speaker on the wall and played a playlist Maya had once written down. People drifted in because people always drifted in. Maya came in scrubs that looked like they had traveled far. Gus arrived with Alfie and 3 dog biscuits. The rollerblader leaned against the pole and tapped his helmet with one finger, like a salute. Reggie from Public Works walked over in his city jacket, hands in his pockets. Marta handed out cups of lemonade and pretended there was a cover charge. We read from the notebook. Not all of it, just a handful of lines, old and new. The skateboarding sun drawing. The UPS box with wings. The quiet sentence about the doctor. The joke about pizza in a skillet. The teenager, now a little taller, read "Be concise" out loud and laughed. A council member, who I recognized only because he wore running shoes and a shirt with a tiny city logo, stopped his jog and listened. He stood there, chest moving, and then asked who had started this. Everyone pointed at the bench, which saved me. He said the city had an adopt-a-bench program for small memorial plaques, and that sometimes they used it for community notes. If you wanted a tiny plaque with a tiny message, he said, catching his breath, you could apply. He gave me a card with a web address printed in tiny patience. Reggie said he'd make sure our application didn't fall into a digital crack. We didn't plan speeches or gather signatures. We just filled out the form that night. Under message, we wrote, "For anyone who needs a minute." We chose a small wave symbol to sit beside the words, because everyone had drawn arrows to the ocean over the year, and an arrow felt like a bossy thing, and a wave felt like a welcome. Then we waited. We did not hold our breath. We kept eating sandwiches and counting breaths and asking Marta for the notebook. The chalk on the sidewalk faded and then disappeared. The jacaranda tree held its purple and then let it go. The bench sat and did what it always did. It waited with us. Weeks later, Reggie called me. His voice sounded like a smile trying to hide. "It's approved," he said. "I can't promise the exact day, but it's soon." Soon turned out to be the following Tuesday. The crew came with a plaque the size of my palm. They drilled 2 tiny holes. We stood back and read the words out loud together, like students on the first day of class. "For anyone who needs a minute." The wave looked like a secret handshake between the ocean and the bench. No one clapped this time. It felt too personal and just right. Maya touched the edge of the plaque with one finger. Gus cleared his throat and then blamed the wind. Alfie went to sleep under the seat, as if someone had flipped a switch labeled nap. The bench belongs to more people now. Sometimes I show up and there's no space, and I stand by the tree and listen. I like those days. I hear the small talk and the deep talk and the kind of talk that looks like quiet. I see tourists who read the plaque and then sit down for exactly 1 minute and get up again, satisfied, as if checking a box on a to-do list labeled "Be Human." I keep bringing the tiny trash bag. I keep bringing the pen. I return the notebook to Marta when I'm done, and she slides it into the same spot under the counter with a nod that says, "Yes, this is what we do." Every once in a while, someone asks if I started the club. I shake my head and tell the truth. I only meant to have lunch. The city gave me a seat. We gave it a voice. It's not a big voice. It doesn't try to change anyone's mind about anything. It just speaks for a minute at a time, in pencil, in ink, in smudged drawings of waves and cups and wheels that look like suns. I go back to my office after, and the air doesn't feel so cold. My head doesn't feel so full. The day still has its work and its worries, but I carry a thin line of salt air with me, inside, like a neat little underline. When I think about the bench at night, I can still feel the warm spot on the seat and hear the ocean ironing itself flat. I can still see 2 dark circles where the bolts meet the ground, strong and small, holding still for all of us who need a minute, or 5, or whatever we can spare.